You actually been to Göbekli Tepe?
I've been many times. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I've been going for like 10 or 11 years. Yeah, I've been there. Yeah, I mean, it's been known since about 2000, but it was really started to be excavated in the mid 1990s. But it was actually kind of partly discovered in 1963, by some American archaeologists. But they didn't recognize for what it was, so they didn't really dig there.
So what do you think it was?
Göbekli Tepe itself is a major megalithic complex. I mean, I believe that it was like, a whole kind of change in consciousness was taking place at the end of the last ice age. Because this was within 200 years of the Younger Dryas kind of ending. So the weather had improved. It feels like groups coming in from the south and the Tufians. You've got groups coming in from the north and coming in through Anatolia, all kind of met and kind of like decided things had changed now. We're gonna monumentalize what we know and put it into stone. And they did it in a profound, innovative manner. It was unbelievable, because this is like, you look at the stone circles in Britain. They're the kind of rough-hewn stones mostly, just placed in circles or different, slightly different geometries. Here they were doing that to another level. They were carving every stone precisely, beautifully, with 3D reliefs on them, with abstract symbols, abstract human forms, anthropomorphic figures.
They have fingers on them.
Fingers, yeah, belts.
Little bags.
That's right, yeah, and strange V-necks with almost like pendants as well. It's just out there. I mean, it's like it seems like it must have come from somewhere, this remarkable kind of culture. I call it like the world's first super civilization, because there's actually they now think, although they say there's officially 12 sites, which include Karahan Tepe, Sayburch, and all these others, they're now saying there could be 38 sites. But then another one of the archaeologists said there could be nearly 100 going in this whole area across southeast Turkey.
Based on what? What makes them think there could be 100?
Well, they keep finding all these surface artifacts, because most of these sites appear to be buried at the end.
Can't they use LiDAR?
I think they have done, yeah. I think they have done, but it's mainly kind of rocky terrain. So I think it's harder to get LiDAR penetrating. I think you can get it through trees and see what's on the surface.
But not
so much
dirt.
Just dirt and rock is a bit troublesome, I think. I think they've done GPR of a lot of places now, though. So they're going to get it. That's what they do.
Ground penetrating radar?
Yeah. So they kind of work out what's going on beneath there to see if it's worth investigating.
Now, what is the modern consensus of when it was constructed, the Göbekli Tepe T-pillars?
Göbekli Tepe officially dates to 9,600 BC, or 11,600 years ago. That's the earliest date, although it stretches, according to the date.
That's the earliest.
Earliest, but that's currently, because only like a small percentage has been actually uncovered so far. So there's actually, 5, 7, maybe 8% has been uncovered.
Right, because my understanding of it was that it was intentionally buried to preserve it from some sort of cataclysm, meaning that it could have been constructed before some big cataclysm or some big flood, if the Younger Dryas was really what people think it is. Yeah, I mean, the thing about it being deliberately buried, that's being kind of challenged, actually, because that's what Klaus Schmidt, he was the main archaeologist, the original head archaeologist there, along with another guy as well, Hauptmann he was called, and he proposed that it was deliberately buried. And this is a tradition you find in that part of the world, where they bury sites at the end of their use. So they used them for 1,000 or 2,000 years. But recent research done by the archaeologists there, they found that the enclosures that have been uncovered, or excavated, there's been like some kind of slope slide, kind of where the debris has fallen down into it over years and years and years. Middens and rubbish and other things build up, and some of it kind of filled in, some of it like that. But then it's pretty much now believed that some of it was then buried afterwards, because there's obvious repair work done. They've repaired it, put stuff back in place, and like put everything where it should be, even artifacts and statues and things like this, and then it's kind of covered over. And so I don't see how a slope slide would not just knock things out of place, so it seems like there's a bit of both, a bit of slope slide and a bit of burying. But Karahan Tepe, that was deliberately buried. How do you think they carved all this shit? What kind of tools were they using?
Well, officially they were using like antler picks. They were kind of using slightly harder stones like basalt.
Yeah.
And for the fine stone work, they were using obsidian for like the precise detail. Things like this. There's obviously no metal back then, although at Chayanu and one other site they found copper, but it was like it was beaten copper. It wasn't like heated up copper. They weren't smelting or anything like this. But but the oldest worked copper in the world was found at one of the sister sites to Karahan Tepe. It's like called Chiano.
And then what exactly here did they use to carbon date?
Here, I think they've just used materials they found at the very lowest levels.
Right.
I think they found burnt wood, and burnt grains. I think mainly burnt wood, especially at Göbekli Tepe. But even at Göbekli Tepe, the problem they got there is that they're choosing stuff that's in the bottom of the walls that are placed in between the outside pillars around the circle. But these walls could have been added later. That's the problem. So because you can't, as soon as you get down to the bedrock, you can't go any further. You can't get anything below the bedrock. So they were using stuff on top of the bedrock in the walls, which could have been added later. And I think they were, because I think that they were just utilizing bedrock initially, and the temples were like, they were slotting kind of the megaliths into like little sockets in the bedrock, like within steps and curbs, which you can see around the site.
It's interesting the way they build the walls by stacking all those little rocks together.
Yeah, I mean, they are probably later. I mean, that's the thing. They are probably later. I mean, because you can see the sophistication is a whole different level. Here, you can't, it's different. I mean, there's so much. I think with Karahan Tepe, it was kind of deliberately damaged before it was buried. It was like decommissioned, by the builders or by the people who were living there at the time.
Really?
Then it got buried. And like, whereas Göbekli Tepe, it doesn't seem to have been deliberately damaged. It was like, it was preserved almost. It was like almost rebuilt. It was, repaired and then put back in place. And then they kind of finished the burial there after the slope slide had happened previously. Whereas here, it looks like stuff's been knocked about, things like this. So yeah, it's a slight problem when you're kind of looking at this site. But yeah, there's a whole load of stuff here. I mean, even some of the floors of the new enclosures, they are made. They're not. Sometimes they're carved flat bedrock. I mean, it's perfectly level as well. I mean, perfectly level. But sometimes they use terrazzo, which is like this lime cement.
Terrazzo?
Yeah. And so they were actually,
really,
because officially the Romans only used, the first people invented it officially.
Yeah.
But they found it in use in abundance here. I mean, serious abundance. I mean, hundreds of square meters of terrazzo is being used. And so what that means is they were heating up limestone up to 850 degrees somehow. And then it would turn into this more powdery form, which they could then use, which is quite toxic kind of whole process.
That melts limestone?
Well, it breaks it down, yeah. And then they mix it with water and mud and other things.
What would be the temperature to melt down or smelt copper?
Yeah, I'm not sure about copper, but I think it's probably less than that, I would imagine.
Less than that, huh?
Yeah. But when it comes to creating, oh my god,
1900 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, okay, that's pretty hot. But they were making this cement basically, and it was waterproof. It was like this perfect kind of. So they were filling in gaps. They were making floors.
Wow.
They were doing this whole thing with it. Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Type in limestone melting point.
Yeah, if you put in terrazzo.
1500 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh yeah, that's 825
Celsius. That's what 825 Celsius.
Yeah. So that would be that's how you make the kind of you break it down.
So a little bit hotter for copper.
Yeah, pretty interesting. So they had all these kind of innovations and technologies happening in this part of the world, which really all developed here. This is like loads of inventions, loads of innovations that the world first ever saw were at these sites.